Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the NEXUS Agenda International Conference. This is our second day. And for today's agenda, we have chosen to focus on an open debate on green corridors and the strategic partnerships resulting from this increasing initiative. And to start our agenda today, we will have the pleasure to have the Port of Sines Planning and Data Analytics Director, Antonio Santos, who will be presenting us the Global Gateway Initiative and framing within the projects that Sines is participating in. Thank you so much.
Good morning all. Good morning everyone here in the room. Good morning everyone that are online. For start, I will the Global Gateway Initiative, and after that I will make a brief presentation of some of the projects that are within this initiative. So Portugal has identified the Port of Sines as a Portuguese flagship for its unique potential in several priority areas such as transport, energy, digital, and people-to-people. 2021, and covering 5 different sectors, the Global Gateway Strategy outlines the ambition of the European Union and its member states to promote both the economic integration and the development of partner countries, notably through investments in strategic, sustainable and secure transport corridors. Mean to facilitate connectivity, mobility and global trade, these strategic corridors require reliable networks and services both on and offshore. Geographical priorities of the global gateways are various, but reveal at the first glance the deep European, Euro-African and Euro-Mediterranean connections. The reinforcement of partnerships with other regions which are central to the global economy, such as the Indo-Pacific Basin or Latin America, is also considered. The Global Gateway aims to mobilize public and private sector infrastructure investments of up to €300 million by 2027. Developing these corridors is a complex endeavor, all the more so if it is to respect commitments set out in 2030 agenda of sustainable development and in the Paris Agreement of climate change. Stable political environments and sound regulatory frameworks are needed, as well as effective cross-border coordination mechanisms. It also takes substantial long-term investments which must be backed by multi-stakeholders and multi-scale approach while taking into consideration ecological, technological, and digital innovations. Therefore, to ensure the sustainability of these corridors, projects implemented under the Global Gateway umbrella must match good governance principles, ensure the respect of norms and standards, particularly in terms of social responsibility and environment impact, and also foster the transfer of technologies and know-how. Within the domains of the Global Gateway, there are, as I said, 5 domains, but within those domains, we can apply for those in the port sector, in particular in the Port Sines. There are 3 main domains. Transport. The European Union intends to implement transport infrastructure projects that foster the sustainable development of partner countries and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, as well as enable the diversification of their supply chains. Within the digital, the European Union aims to work with partner countries to deploy digital infrastructures such as submarine and terrestrial fiber optical cables, space-based secure communication systems, as well as cloud and data infrastructures. Within the climate and energy, seeks to cooperate with partner countries to enable the energy transition and to diversify our clean energy supply at the same time. It seems to support countries in the creation of competitive markets to enable hydrogen produced outside the European Union to be traded internationally without export restrictions or price distortions. It also seeks to work with partner countries to invest in infrastructures for developing sustainable and resilient raw materials value chains. So, why are green shipping routes important? Global trade is growing, and shipping accounts for 80% of it. The shipping industry emits around 3% of all global greenhouse emissions. In terms of CO2 emissions alone, it is estimated that 1 billion metric tons are emitted annually. Therefore, intervention is critical to prevent emissions from increasing. It is estimated that 5% of shipping will need to be operating on zero emissions fuels by 2030 to help reach the 2050 target. So why create a green shipping corridor? To realize actual carbon emissions reductions for shipping and port-related activities, bringing together relevant stakeholders to reduce carbon emissions. So the port will play a special role concerning infrastructure development to support fuel storage and bunkering, as biomethanol, ammonia, methane, and hydrogen. In that way, how the Global Gateway pretends to implement this initiative. Global Gateway aims to mobilize infrastructure development, investing in 300 million euros in the period of 2021-2027. The Global Gateway, with its focus on limiting risks of debt distress in partner countries, provide a reliable alternative for the global infrastructure development. First, funding the model is a mix of grants, soft loans, and guarantees aimed at crowding in private sector investments. It is also important to underline that the Global Gateway has a strong focus on expertise alongside financial assistance. This is important because creating an enabling environment to attract investments in partner countries with support for reform of regulatory framework or technical support for the development of infrastructure projects is important to ensure the scale and long-term durability of development actions behind individual infrastructure projects. So, within the connectivity, that is for the three domains that we talked about, energy, transport, and digital, there are several projects, and one example of the flagship project, it is the one project that is within the list of the projects for 2024. That is according and a sequence of the memorandum of understanding that Port of Sines signed with the Port of Pecém to establish a green and digital corridor between these two ports. So, what is the strategy for in this particular initiative for Sines? Sines intend to present himself as an Atlantic hub for agriculture, bulk, horse, and green hydrogen. So, Sines is presenting as an ideal place for the installation of several companies, and is in particular some industries. It's the first European port of the Atlantic routes, and is a privileged gateway to the European Union and the Iberian Peninsula. So, in consequence of its main characteristics and this strategic position, it can afford some conditions to their clients. The Port of Sines is a deep water port, as known, to receive the largest vessels operating in the world. The Port of Sines has 5 specialized terminals, but in particular, in the case of this global gateway initiative, there are 2 terminals that positions himself as the main strategic terminals for the green corridors, that are the liquid bulk, because we have to storage and we have to supply the liquid bulk, the fuels, and the solid bulk as the multipurpose terminal for the grains and ores. In particular, by the domain of the digital, the Port of Sines has a high level degree of digitalization, as he has a tool that represents and could achieve this excellence process for the digitalizations. Sines is positioning himself as a hydrogen valley for Portugal. And for sure, Port of Sines is committed to the energy transition. In particular, in the case of the multipurpose terminal, we can say that he positioned himself as with the particular strategical conditions, because it has several areas that are available with capacity to install some warehouse and silos dedicated for agribusiness and to the war operations. So, and is positioned near some areas that are available on the logistical area near the port. Sines, the Port of Sines, the Port Authority, is developing now a new terminal that are dedicated to cryogenic liquefied gases, which aims to create conditions to diversify the supply of LNG and to allow to respond the national commitment to supply bankers of LNG too. These infrastructures will have conditions to operate some other renewable gas as hydrogen. Within the green fuels storage hub, well, we have in the jurisdiction area, we have some areas that can be that are available to storage and to operate some e-fuels, and this is according and in a contribution for the port to the decarbonization goals of the national and European Union. So in this case of the e-fuels and alternative fuels, we must highlight that these are the particular materials, or I should say the fuels that are needed to complement and to assure these green corridors that we are talking about. In a particular domain that are the digital, the Port of Sines has implemented the logistics single window, and this particular one is a tool that will enable digital corridors. It implements harmonized business process, simple modal cross-border corridors, and streamlined digital process with authorities. So this is the main tool. It's a PCS that where all the authorities make all the process that are related to the vessels and the cargo. So, in particular, within this initiative, the Port Authority had signed already 3 memoranda of understanding with 2 ports, 3 entities. This is to support the strengthening of European resilience for the raw materials that are critical for all the trade and all the industry that is now under stress. The digitized logistics corridors and making these corridors more sustainable. So these 3 memoranda of understanding, the first one was signed with the port of Dundee, Angola. The second one was signed with the Companhia Siderúrgica Nacional from Brazil. And the third one was with the Port of Pecém, Complexo Industrial e Portuário do Pecém. This is the support of the triangle that it is intended to design the South Atlantic Triangle. The first memorandum, as I said, was signed with the Port of Dundee, and this memorandum of understanding integrated the list of flagships projects of the Global Gateway for 2023, and the other 2 that were signed with the entities that operates in the port of Pecém were integrated on the list of projects for the Global Gateway initiative for 2024. So, in particular, I will briefly pass some of these projects. I will pass one that is in some way advanced, and that is the project that intends to develop a terminal in the port of Psem. It is an investment of about 440 million euros, and intends to implement 4 terminals for iron ore, grains, fertilizer, general cargo, and including containerized cargo. The terminals will be able to receive Capesize ships of 170,000 DWTs with drafts of 70 meters. The capacity of these terminals is 35, more or less 36 million tons expected in 2057. So this is a particular terminal that is developed as a private terminal that is developed by CSN. The project that includes this entity, the CSN, includes one more project that is related to the development of this infrastructure, the port infrastructre, that is the Transnordestina railway connection that connects an area near the Piauí that is rich on agribusiness and or materials. So it is a development of 1,470 million euros. So it is a very particular investment, and is planned to be finalized on 2027. It is a project that is it left only some kilometers to develop, to connect to the terminal that is under development on the port of Psem. The other entity, the port, the complex portuário, has a project that integrates this particular initiative that they intend to establish as a hydrogen hub to export to the European countries, in particular to Rotterdam. They have signed an agreement with the Port of Rotterdam to develop a corridor for the export the hydrogen that they will produce near the port. The first project that was signed within this initiative is with the port of Dundee. It includes the construction of a sea terminal. They intend to implement a national grain reserve, so within the particular domain of food, and they intend to develop an industrial zone too. It is an investment of 1,400 million euros, more or less. So they intend to implement in 2 phases. The first phase is only the basic infrastructures of the industrial zone. So it is split the investment of 1.5 million euros. They intend to separate, phase it in these two phases: the basic infrastructures and internal of external and external of the area. It is representing a funding gap. That's why they apply to the Global Gateway. As I said, the Global Gateway Initiative has some way to fund these kind of projects. It has a diversified way to guarantee or to support this type of investments, grants, loans. So they have to analyze all the projects, and they will decide. They have a team, that is a Team Europe, that will analyze all the projects, and according to the design and the studies that were running within these projects, they decide what type of support they will do. And as we talk about not only maritime corridors, we talk about logistics corridors. They are developing a connection between on the east of the Port of Dande. They will pretend to implement a connection, a railway connection that will connect to the República do Congo. It is an investment of more or less 1.6 billion euros of railway development. So briefly, concerning the three MOU that we have signed with those three entities, the Port of Sines is has Atlantic centrality at the crossroads of sea routes. It has some near an area of production of green energies, in particular hydrogen, and is focused on energy transition. Yes, a potential to be a hub for the reception and distribution of ores and agri-food grains, and technologically talking, the Port of Sines is digitalization in some way in advanced. In what concerns the CSN project, we are talking about a large production of and the capacity of agri-food grains and ores, because they are connecting an area in Piauí that is very rich in these particular critical materials. They are developing a new port infrastructure, and they will connect the interior of Brazil with the railway connection that, as we know, it's a green way of transport. Concerning the PECEM, the complex industrial of PECEM, they intend to develop a green hydrogen hub. The Port of Dande, they will intend to create a national strategic reserve. They will focus on food and energy security, and they will create a new ocean terminal for various cargos. But Those are three of the projects within the Global Gateway Initiative that are already signed and in development with the port of Sines. Anyway, we are almost signing a new MOU now with Namibia, with Numport, take into account the green H2 projects that are being developing in Namibia. We expected to sign this agreement in the beginning of 2025. It will be in January. Another agreement that we are now developing is with Mexico, with the port of Coatzacoalcos, and it's for the corridor, logistic corridor that connect the north of Mexico with the south of Mexico, within the isthmus of Tehuantepec. It's a railway connection from the south to the north, or north-south, to develop afterwards the connection and a corridor, a maritime corridor between Mexico and Portugal. So, as I said, we are talking about not only the maritime corridor. We are concerning and we are making some strategy efforts to develop the logistic, make it not only a maritime corridor, green corridor, but the logistic corridor. And we intend to integrate the interland corridors. So we intend to, because of some of these particular projects, like the CSN, because we are talking about the production railway to the port and a maritime corridor that connects Port of Tseng with the Port of Sines. And afterwards, we intend to connect the industry near the port, so the industry in Portugal. So we are talking about the logistic corridor. We intend to be a green logistic corridor, and for sure we intend, because as I said previously, we have high potential within the digital tools that it's already implemented in the port and are under development in this agenda. We intend to develop the logistic green corridor and the digital corridor. So, thank you all for your attention. I expect to be.
Our venue's last panel will comprise a roundtable moderated by Jentor Pedersen. Jentor is Managing Director of Marble and one of the founders of the company NEXUS. Since early 1990s, Jentor has been active in the European Union and national projects for the development of innovative logistics solutions and related information technologies. Before founding Marlo, he was involved in the business and technology development of advanced software systems and business and technology development in the maritime sector. Jentor holds an MSc Norwegian University of Science and Technology and an MSc in Computer Science from the University of California.
What about now? Okay, so while we're fixing the technology here, I have been, in preparation for this, I was looking at an organization called Getting to Zero Coalition, because I really did not know what was meant by green corridors. So I had to try to find out. And as was previously indicated, it really is about getting 5% of the fleet you doing zero emission fuels by 2030 to create a tipping point for actually making this the reality of shipping and not that. There are about 200 organizations in this coalition, and in their drive to do things here, they have initiated more than 60 green corridor activities. And one of those that have been most, shall we say, active in all of these is Singapore. And a lady from Singapore here will then be able to come up to the stage and eventually talk about what the Singapore initiatives are. One of them being the Silk Alliance, which also includes MSC, which is a company well known to Finnish. We have the third, Roger, who is one of those who will provide the fuels for these ships. And we do not have Alexander. And to a certain degree that I'm almost incidental, because when you look at the definition of these green corridors, they do not include hinterland transportation. So he would have to be an anomaly in this discussion anyway. We'll have to find a, quote, connection between those real green corridors and the hinterland activities that he would then support and work with. So please come to the stage. And I invite the lady from Singapore then to start to talk about the Singapore's role in this and their motivation to deal with these things.
Thank you. Thank you, Yen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Xin Yi. I'm from Singapore, Port of Singapore, and I work for the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, or MPA in short. So maybe I'll just do a little bit of introduction about myself. So I've been spending about 15 years in this organization across various roles. And now I'm posted to Belgium. So I'm currently calling Brussels my home for the past 6 months now. And I will be for the next 3 years. So we'll come by Portugal more often. In fact, this is my first time. So very, very, very pleased, and thank you for the hospitality. And the reason why I'm in Europe, not necessarily Brussels, because we're trying to find a home in various maritime cities. The reason why I'm in Brussels is because the Singapore Embassy for Benelux is in Brussels. But personally, I'm actually leading the Singapore-Rotterdam Green and Digital Shipping Corridor, or we call GDSC in short, which is why I travel between Brussels to Rotterdam very frequently. And it's one of the first corridors that Singapore has forged, and also one of the 6 corridors that the Global Maritime Forum has listed as more advanced in its implementation, in the implementation phase and beyond feasibility. So we are one of the 6 for the Rotterdam corridor. And under this corridor, our aim is to actually find a willing partner, like-minded partners, of which Port of Rotterdam is very much a close partner of ours. And we've been looking at this corridor as a platform to harmonize standards, to bring together like-minded industry partners. So we have MSC, CMA, CGM, Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, ONE, Ocean Network Express. So the top 6, except for COSCO, which we've reserved them for China corridor. Yeah. So apart from Rotterdam corridor, Singapore has also forged several other corridors with different strategic intent. One would be with Port of Los Angeles, Long Beach, which is also one of our key trading partner on the Americas side. And we have one with Tianjin and Shantung, one of the latest to be signed with China. And for Japan, we have a corridor with 6 different ports in Japan: Tokyo, Kobe, Yokohama, Osaka, and so on, Nagoya, and one more. And we also have a corridor with Australia, because a lot of the production of ammonia will be done in Australia. So it's very strategic for us to actually have a corridor for supply of ammonia to Singapore. And just to give a gist of why we forge certain corridors with certain partners. So on the Rotterdam corridor itself, we have various fuel tracks. We have ammonia, methanol, hydrogen, biomethane, and another track on financial regulations. So bringing together different people to look at different things that they're interested in. We could test bait bunkering pilots. We could look at policy areas to champion with European Commission, or within Singapore is just with MPA. Yeah, so it's a bit easier and faster just to talk to the few of us. So that's the corridor for us, and how we use it to harmonize standards, do trials, and also to talk to fuel suppliers. We have BP, Shell on board, so to look at how we could make sure that the availability of the supply is in Singapore or Rotterdam, and that the affordability is there through financial regulations, incentives or initiatives, and also that the demand is there from the shipping lines who are also on board the corridor. Largely so, and I'll share more in the subsequent questions.
And then we all talk about these fuels, but they're not easily available. So our friend on the left here is one of the ones that can talk about the challenges of actually creating such fuels and make them, shall we say, commercially viable.
Morning, everyone. I do understand that sometimes ports and fuel production and different kinds of initiatives can get a little boring, right? So I hope during the course of our discussion, we're going to spice it up and make the ports, infrastructure and green corridors subject a little more sexy, right? So that we can all get a lot out of our discussion, right? So my name is Rogaciano Rebello. I think there were 2 C's over there, but it is 1 G and a C. But my friends call me Roger. I'm the co-founder of Madoka. Our sole purpose is to produce fuels, and we are basically focusing on a portfolio of fuels rather than a portfolio of projects. I mean, I know a lot of people say, I have 12 projects in the world, I have 6 projects in the world, but the reality is you need to get your first one to work and actually produce. And our focus has been, we look at ammonia, methanol as 2 core alternatives of fuel. It can be used for maritime purposes. It can be used for other end user applications. And our main aim is to actually make something work. So we have a project here in Sines that we are in the engineering phase, and we are scheduled to break ground January 26. So we are on a very tight clock for this project. We have committed to the European Commission on the production side because we were successful on the hydrogen bank auction. We basically have a clock that's ticking, and it's already started ticking since September of this year. And we need to get this production up and running by about March 2029. That's it. It has to happen. Otherwise, a lot of the financial incentives would be lost. In addition to that, you can have a lot of product. And let's say we are successful in making it happen. You need infrastructure to take it where it's needed. And everyone, when they started in 2020 talking about hydrogen, alternative fuels, oh, we will do this and we will produce that, they kind of ignored that you need a port, you need infrastructure at the port, and then you need the vessels to actually take what you produce through the ports into the vessels to somewhere else where the consumers are located. And that's where the corridors come into play. Okay? I mean, in Portugal, we have tried it 3 times. The 3rd time is just in November. just last November, we brought together a ecosystem of entities to basically revitalize a green corridor within southern and northern Europe. And I think signing a lot of MOUs is great to create a good buzz, but then something else needs to come out of it. So I always look at some specific tangible goals after an MOU is signed. There are two things that we are doing. One, we are at this point in time undertaking a feasibility study or like a pre-feed for a green fuels terminal right here in Sines. In fact, I can say this openly now that we awarded KBR or Kellogg Brown and Root from the US, the pre-feed for this terminal just day before yesterday. So I would say, yes, good, the MOU was signed, but now there's some action. It's a co-funded project with the European Commission under the SINEA Res Energy initiative. The second aspect that we have been working on is basically a bunkering manual. Now, a lot of people have spoken about, let's say, alternative fuels, but until some time ago, ammonia was not really looked at as a fuel for shipping, or for that matter, for anything other than fertilizer. So you need to handle that product. You need to understand how you're going to operate your terminal. You need to understand how you're going to operate the ships that are going to transport this and basically do ship-to-ship transfer, etc. So the second initiative out of the MOU has been a ABS certified bunkering services manual. And now we are working towards creating a operating manual for a terminal itself to handle such products. I think there's something similar that Itochu and Singapore has done together. It's on the similar lines that we are working on this. And we will be working with the Port of Sines, Port of Rotterdam, and also Douwsport to basically endorse the path we are taking for operationalizing these very specific technical initiatives to basically create the base to make something happen. Yeah? So I think I will pause over here.
That's fine. And since we only have 2, not 3 participants on the table here, I hope that the audience might be the third actor. So please, whenever you have questions or comments to whatever we say, please say it. Don't sort of wait until the Slido is there, because we really need some activity going here to debate things. And you mentioned, Roger, that one thing is an MOU, the other thing is making it happen. And if I look at then this annual report again, it says that one of the things that are new this time is that many of these 63 initiatives are now struggling from financial challenges. So is it, as we say in Norwegian, up like a bear, down like a skin? Is this really what's going to happen to this? Is it really just a hype? Or is there some substance in these, quote, green corridors?
Maybe I can take the question. Yeah, is very important indeed. I would say, looking back at the past 2 years, right, where we thought that, oh, we saw methanol new builds, we saw ammonia ready, ammonia capable new builds orders. We thought that there would be a firm demand for alternative fuels, but in fact, it's pretty far from the truth, right? Like when you see the vessels coming up, taking Maersk for example. Laura Maersk came to Singapore, bunker in Korea, Singapore, Egypt, Rotterdam, and then to Copenhagen. But in essence, how true is it that these vessels are indeed picking up methanol? The amount of green methanol is not there. If it's there, the price is not right. Yeah. So in fact, we realize that, oh yeah, the new builds are there, but in fact, it doesn't translate to the demand for fuel. Somebody has to pay for this green fuel. One example we saw from the Rotterdam corridor is Hapag-Lloyd, where Hapag-Lloyd was actually awarded by ZEMBA, the Zero Emission Maritime Buyers Alliance, for that looks at bringing together a group of green cargo owners, include IKEA, Amazon, and so forth, that is keen to pay more And of course, I think they will translate it to the consumers, but they do believe that the consumers are green conscious and will be willing to pay. So they came together, have an aggregated demand, and they look at least 90% reduction in GHG emissions. So they awarded it to Hapag-Lloyd. But it wasn't burning e-fuels, it was burning biomethane, which has another debate about availability of bioresources in the long run. So that was on the Rotterdam corridor. And it will be put on into implementation for 2025 and 2026. A couple of shipments. Not too many, but as a start, I think it's good to show that there is that intent or that demand from the buyers to pay. This is something I see that is coming from more strongly on the container side, because shipping lines could actually translate this to many more consumers who probably is just like about $1 per pair for a pair of Nike shoes, for example, that people are willing to pay. But, you know, yeah, like what you say, who's going to pay if it's dry bulk, for example, or tankers? Every shipment is just probably one or two buyer. This is a large amount of money. So personally, I've seen a little bit more pickup on adoption of alternative fuels for container ship, which translate to consumers like you and me. But for dry bulk and bulk, a lot of the companies that I'm talking to are taking a watch and see kind of a view. They are also not going in too aggressively to even build certain kind of new builds. Only a couple of them that I see are doing so, but they are pretty much tonnage providers to the commodity traders. And this is driven from the commodity traders instead. Yeah. Yes, back to you.
Any comment from your side on that?
Well, all I can say is that this is going to cost us much more than we have said since 2020. All of us are going to pay for it. All of us in this, and our children and our grandchildren. It's a change of lifestyle. It's not about, oh, I'll just put ammonia in the ship, or I'll put methanol in the ship, or I will do something else. It's a whole different way of living. In 2020, a lot of very aggressive projections were made. A lot of comments were made. They said renewable energy is going to be solar at 20 euros a megawatt hour. Wind will be 28 euros a megawatt hour by 2024. By 2025, it'll all stabilize. I've seen those reports. I still have them. And I called those guys and said, you know, you said it's going to be 20 euros a megawatt hour. I've read the fine print as well. So don't give me the bullshit about read the fine print. The market is just not there. It's 60 euros for base load, a megawatt hour. Okay? So how did they make this whole story up? It's a lot of nice, very flashy PowerPoint presentations. And I also thought, well, great, you know what? It all looks cheap. So if that's where it's going to head, let's make some cheap fuel. But that's not how it is. It's not going to be the case. We are in a phase of realization that it is not going to be this way. And now everybody knows that they need to put their hands in the pocket and actually pay for it. And as we all know, that takes some doing to get that money out of the pocket.
And then there are people who are saying, should we really do it that way? There are alternatives potentially. And a good friend of mine, one of the best researchers I had known in this area, they did a paper a short while ago and say that if you are creating better ships, more fuel efficient, using wind power, you can actually reduce energy for moving the goods to almost 30% of what is currently being used. So by just making it better, you can save energy and you save money so that the transport becomes cheaper, not more expensive, while the alternative, when you're looking at the alternative fuels, you will up the prices and the cost of movements. So what is the right thing to do? And how can we strike a balance between these two types of initiatives? Jaco, you had your hand up.
We all know that the fossil fuels that we have, they will run out. So the need to do this is coming at us. Maybe not for our children, but our great-grandchildren, they will have to face the music anyway. when it comes to this challenge of finding alternative fuels to drive our vessels as well as other transport means. I totally agree, by the way, with Jan Toure. There is absolutely no reason why we should not use other alternatives to reduce the level of fossil fuels that we are using today, but we have to replace them anyway at some point in the future. So why not start thinking about this now? And as you say, let's be realistic about what things really are, rather than spinning reels in front of people's eyes with just giving like estimates that are 1/3 of the real values that you should expect. So there is a little bit of a spin there that we should avoid as well, so that we don't do the wrong things based on the wrong information. I do have a question to all of the panel, but mostly to Sinyi. And that is, you mentioned harmonization of standards. Now, standards mean many different things to many different people. So if you have a little bit of time somewhere during the panel, could you elaborate on that for us?
Should I take this question? I do see another hand for a gentleman.
Yeah, we'll do that afterwards.
Yeah. So maybe I'll answer this question first.
Yep.
Jakob, I'm definitely not the standards expert like yourself and many in the room today. But in Singapore, we always believe in harmonizing things at a global level, and maritime is definitely one industry that is international. So we go through various platforms. It could be corridors, it could be a port authorities roundtable, which involves more ports. So taking the Rotterdam digital corridor, for example, the Port of Rotterdam and Singapore decided to look at say a total of about 90 data sets across administrative, operational, nautical data sets, so that we could actually harmonize in terms of port calls, optimization. What kind of information is being sent from ship to shore or shore to ship? Both Singapore and Rotterdam doing the same thing, so that we could ensure the vessels coming from Rotterdam to Singapore or Singapore to Rotterdam, we know where they are. We could prep ourselves a little bit better when they arrive in Singapore, in terms of port calls, bunkering, ship supplies, terminal availability, tugboats, etc. Because every extra minute that they spend in the port is actually money lost. And nobody wants that. And you know, Singapore is really small. Just to give a bit of a context to those who may not be so familiar, and even if you've been to Singapore, you don't know how small we are. So if you look at from horizontally, west to east, we are only 42 kilometers. And top to bottom, north to south is 24 kilometers. This is how small we are, and we have 6 million people in this small island of ours. And this includes water catchment, defense, greenery and all, not just economic, you know. So this is really about how small we are. And even the sea space, we have reclaimed as much as we can to our boundaries. So it's very sensitive geopolitically as well as per every other country and region, I believe. So we can't go any further. We have to even optimize our sea space. Yeah. And today, we even have to think about energy security. Could we actually have some floating energy production or storage facilities? Even when we look at electric vessels for domestic use, we are even thinking of a sea grid, because we are going beyond our available land space. So sea space is also very important to us. We have to optimize that for port calls. Yeah.
There was a hand in the audience.
Thank you very much. My name is Helder Pereira. I represent the European Shippers Council, which is a cargo owners organization established in Brussels. Thank the speaker over there on my right, on your left, sir, for his honesty in terms of the transition, because the transition, as somebody said, is not a lunch invitation. And on that note, I would like to ask, who's actually paying for this? As a shipper, as a cargo owner, we have the feeling that shipping companies don't do enough. And I'll give you an example with the ETS system. The ETS system, which is a system for a cap and trade, allowing for financial resources to member states to invest on the modernization of fleets, is now being used to a certain extent to modernize fleets, but as an extra income source for shipping companies on the back of everybody else. So my question to you is, who's really paying for this? because from a shipper's point of view, we feel that we pay more than anybody else. Now, I understand the good word that was said that for some shippers, it's positive because of the consumer activists' attitude of consumers today to say you have a green option here. But when we speak with shipping companies who get investment via the investment fund from the European Union paid with ETS, but seem on the fleets, down on the ground, to take much longer, it seems that the costs end up always being paid by the same. And the second point that I would like to make is how do you accommodate change in policy? I've been dealing with European policy for the last 27 years. From all my adult life, I've dealt with European policy. What was true, say, in the early 2010s is not true anymore. LNG gas, the gentleman spoke about it before. The European Commission published not so long ago an intention to finish all gas contracts by 2049. Do you feel the same fear? Do you feel that going forward up to 2029, what we see today as methanol or other alternatives, there may be another policy shift? And I ask this because investments in ports are known to take a very long time. In one of the research projects where I'm involved, called Permagov, also supported by Horizon Europe, we're in contact with the Napa ports, the North Adriatic Ports Association, where Trieste is part, where Ravenna is part, and they're saying, we don't know what to do. Because we set up the premises and the manufacturing and all the structures inside the port to accommodate for liquefied natural gas, and we're now being told that we shouldn't do that. So my question has really two angles. How do you accommodate for these policy shifts, which seem to be on the increase? And I mean, I don't want to even speak about the United States of America, where the next president's focus is, and I quote, frack, baby, frack. So beyond that, just within the European Union, how do you accommodate to that? And who really pays for this transition? Because at least from the cargo owner's point of view, it seems it's always us who end up fitting the bill. Thank you very much.
Roger, do you want to comment? You may have time to think if you want to.
Yeah, there are a couple of. Okay. The Commission as a whole hasn't been thinking about this holistically. It has been a fickle-minded approach, okay? The bottom line is, if you look at how you're going to make green fuels and the list of compliance that they have put, it's basically saying to the producer, I'm going to tie your legs, I'm going to tie your hands, and I'm going to give you a 100-kilo sack of potatoes. Now you can swim across the ocean. Yeah? No, that's the reality, because we have temporal correlation, bidding zone restrictions. We have all kinds of other restrictions to make that fuel happen. So there's your cost. If you wanted to be more realistic, I would say a combination of different options and alternatives would get you where you need to go. Okay, one option, you take the ship, make it better. You take the engine, make it better. I mean, Formula One, they use what, 1.2 liter V8s, V12s? 1.2, not 6.2, not 8.5, 1.2. So you can make an engine more powerful with less fuel in. So that's one option. And then if you want to take it to the next level, of course, you can pay a little more for your fuel because it's not natural gas based. We need to be realistic here. You're producing now fuel with electricity. So you're trading in a different market. So your 80% of your input cost is actually electricity to make these new fuels. So whether you want to make it cheap or not, it's dependent on a completely different market, an electron market, not a molecule market, right? So when you look at these policies, if we were to say, let's make the ships better, let's make the engines better, and then on top of it, let's use less bio or less E or electric fuels, which means your overall cost would be low because you need to buy less fuel. Your ships would be more efficient, and a combination of everything would be looking much better. And to start off, instead of having a utopian approach to policy and regulation, which European Union is very good at. I mean, the Americans invent, the Europeans regulate, the masters of regulation, and the Chinese produce. Whether you like it or not, that's where we are. Okay? So if we were to say we would make renewable fuel, not RFNBO compliant just up front, then we could have used renewable energy that already exists. We didn't have to add more capacity to produce. So there's additionality requirements, right? So if we could use the renewable energy that is there, yes, we could have made our lives a little easier. I mean, I hope I've kind of covered each and every aspect of this, several questions that were put
Sure.
together. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, although this is not easy, you can look at the Green Deal. The Green Deal was a very ambitious thing was to essentially make Europe great. But what happened? It's the opposite thing happening. Namely, China takes over EVs, and the European car industry, which was a major employer in Europe, major part of the European economy, is suddenly out for disaster. And things are backlashing in a sense. Not for good intentions, because people were not really aware of the consequences of these types of thoughts and thinking. And not going into discussion about electricity prices in Europe, which are obviously significantly different from only a short year ago, because the Germans shut down the atomic sources and the coal, and suddenly they are exporting from Norway as astronomical prices, making the whole Norwegian, shall we say, electric power industry going bankrupt because they can't afford to pay the prices. So there are many things happening, and are there any signals that similar things might happen in the green maritime corridors?
Signals of trade.
Signals of very good intentions having side effects that we really don't want.
Okay. I would like to, my answer will kind of address the gentleman who asked about the question and raised about ETS. I'll bring in a article that I read from Transport and Environment, TNE. So this is in Brussels, quite a famous think tank that's been championing certain policy work with the European Commission. So the article says that, quote, a survey that they've done, tracking all the European, quite a few major European container liners that's been supplying, trading between Europe and outside. So they're saying 90% of the shipments out of Europe and in are actually overcharged. So it's because of the lack of clarity. So when EU ETS came, when Maritime was included in this year, so the shipping lines will implement a EU ETS levy or surcharge. Fuel EU Maritime is coming 1st Jan 2025. So companies have already started looking at fuel EU Maritime levy, or said that they'll increase it as a certain charge. And of course, there's the Red Sea situation. Freight rate increases because you have to now take a longer route instead of just through the Suez Canal. So things like this, the shipping companies are very innovative. They can actually do that. So what I would say is that a global regulation that does not compromise or prejudice against certain region or certain trading region probably would be one way that's a bit easier and a fair playing ground for everyone, and there's greater clarity. And a goal-based policy could also be one that provides more flexibility. Say, for example, IMO has a certain set target, net zero 2050, 2030, 20% or to 30% reduction, 2040, 70 to 80% reduction. I would say a goal-based one would be good because the shipping industry is so different. You know, Maersk could be burning methanol, CMA, and Hapag-Lloyd are burning LNG, and each vessel asset is 30 years of life, economic life. They invested a lot of money into it, so you can't just ask them to scrap it just because of a policy change, like no more LNG, or now we're going to do LNG, and it takes time, lead time to actually build it. So I'll say that a regulation that's global will create that business case, and a regulation that's global and goal-based will provide that business case and that flexibility in policy implementation or design to meet the general global maritime needs. Yeah.
On the side effects. So when we talk about side effects, I think if you look at 2020 and you compare it with 2024, in 2020, everyone wanted to build a hydrogen plant, or everyone thought they could build a hydrogen plant. A solar developer thought he could build a hydrogen plant. A wind developer thought he could build a hydrogen plant. Everybody thought they could do hydrogen. It's like you just go and you put one in the field and the electrolyzer just connects itself to the grid and it all happens. It's a process plant. It's a very complicated set of equipment. If you don't handle it properly, it can explode, right? So when we talk about side effects, there's one simple thing we need to realize. In 2020, everybody thought they could put an electrolyzer anywhere and everywhere. They could produce a hell of a lot of hydrogen. And from there, they would do all kinds of derivatives. And it is like a one-on-one swap with fossil in terms of volume. Forget anything in terms of volume. 2024, bioresources are limited. So you will never have large, mass-scale, high-volume biofuels. Then we go to e-fuels. You need electricity as feedstock. We already need electricity for our day-to-day life. We need electricity to electrify future applications. I mean, Norway, as you said rightly in the morning, uses electrification for heating and everything in the house, right? I mean, everybody is going that way, and now we need electricity to compete with all these other applications to produce fuel. And that's why I come back to the point that we should never discard alternatives, and a combination of alternatives is only what's going to make it successful. Better engines, better ships, use of better fuel, producing fuels with different feedstocks, etc. Yeah? And let's be, we cannot put our heads in the sand, because the ostrich, when the ostrich actually puts their head in the sand, the bum is right there to give a big kick. And that's what wakes you up, right? So we shouldn't, even when I look at what I try to achieve in terms of producing hydrogen and ammonia and methanol, it's a vision and a mission that we are at, to produce something better, different, and in small quantities and get it right. So let's be also honest to ourselves. Before we go green, I think we are going to go very, very gray and black, because to produce all the wind turbines, to produce all the solar panels, and all the new generation ships, we are going to spew a hell of a lot of carbon. Because we have not changed how we manufacture turbines, how we manufacture solar panels, and how we build the ships. We are still doing it the same way we have done it since 1970, 80, and 90. Maybe we have improved a little bit on electrification, but it is still needing the same basic elements and fundamentally the same processes that we are following. That's the truth.
Exactly, and I would like to follow up Helder, because you say that the shippers are paying. That is not exactly right. I am paying, because you are charging me for your products. So obviously it gets back to me. And since I then observe that everything is really going to be expensive and more expensive, how long will I accept that these types of sustainability things, which still many people think are just rubbish, pardon the expression, will actually affect my economy, my personal economy? Will that have an effect in this? I believe so, because we still are far from having a consensus as to the effects of climate change. Despite the fact that all the people in UN R&D activities are saying what they're saying, that we are observing all the effects of weather and all that, many people are still not really accepting the fact. And they will not accept to pay for the extra things either. You might respond, Heller.
I'm not the speaker, so I shouldn't be speaking so much. But take the point. I think, yeah, you're right, the costs get passed. But I would say that in certain sectors, they get passed differently. And we've heard the discussions on the levels of competition that exist between shipping companies, and that has been, even within the European Commission, an open question. And you are probably aware that the block exemption that existed, that allowed certain types of alliances, has stopped, no longer exists. Us, however, as shippers, as cargo owners, we face competition. So if we're not competitive, we lose our place in the market. We're not protected by any block exemption. We have no special favors. We either win or lose. And for that, we need to keep costs low. And to keep costs low, we often have to absorb some of those costs. So in as much as I agree with you, sir, that indeed costs are passed downstream, in certain sectors, they seem to be somehow wiggled around. Whilst in others, we end up paying the bill. But again, I'm an interest representative. I represent my sector, so maybe the shipping companies might say something else instead. Thank you very much.
I'll just add a little bit before Jacob says. To be clear, I am in Brussels, but I'm working for Singapore, not European Commission. Yeah? But I would say the shipping companies will say that OPEX-wise, maybe the cargo owners or end consumers are paying a little bit more. I believe so. But the shipping companies might say they are paying for the capex, because the vessels for methanol, ammonia fuel might be significantly more expensive than traditional conventional vessels. Yeah, but this again, once more is the shipping companies, and their financing can be quite different. They could be a joint financing with their cargo owners as well. Like maybe sometimes the commodity traders have a strong bargaining power to do so. I think Jacob has a question, and Mohammed, right, from Egypt, Tangier. Yeah, I recognize you from AIVP, but yeah.
So I'll stand up. I'll bring the mic to you. I think we get sidetracked on the money issue, if I'm really honest, because I already said before, maybe it's our great-grandchildren, but at some point the fossil fuels are history because they're basically depleted. And at that point, we have to deal with the cost anyway. So accept the fact that we are getting poorer as a result of the fact that fossil fuels are a limited resource, and at some page we're going to pay the price for our squandering that valuable asset as we have done over the past decades or centuries. So that's a bit of a statement from my side. Another thing is, I think every regulation has its side effects. So all we can hope for is that people choose regulations that have the least harmful side effects. And we should not expect any regulation to have none. So in that sense, I'm a little bit less optimistic about the various policies that may come out there. I do agree with Xin Yi that regulations that offer flexibility to some extent are least likely to have the most, let's say, damaging side effects. But side effects there will be, unfortunately, I'm afraid. And one other thing. To create fuel, we need electricity. At the moment in Norway, everything, even the heating of the house, appears to be based on electricity. I come from the Netherlands. It's not difficult in the Netherlands anyway, because we have all of that gas infrastructure to upgrade it so we can use the fuel for what fuel is supposed to do, burn it and heat things. So I think we need to rethink maybe some of the things we've done in the past to take advantage of the fuels we produce so that we can also have a more balanced use of the various sources of energy we have. And then maybe we can also reduce the let's say, competing demands on electricity a bit more. It's just, it may not be available everywhere, that kind of an approach, but let's use what we have as potential opportunities. So,
while you bring the mic up there, I make another observation, because if you look at these green corridors, they're mostly about consumer goods, containers. But if you look at the fleet or the maritime operation, I shouldn't say a fraction, but at least not a very big part of total shipping activities. So even if we were implementing all of these 63 initiatives doing container ships, would we really have a significant impact on the 3% emission that we do for maritime? Or should we rather try to focus on the, shall we say, 80% shipping, which is tramp shipping, bulk shipping, that really are causing most of these problems, including staying out at port here, waiting to get discharged? Is that a better approach?
I'll say that.
This goes first.
Hello everyone, I am Adil Aitwalil. I am Chief Officer of Maritime Operation Tanzania Port. Chini, just I saw an email that our IT, they prepared APIs for as part of green digital corridor between Singapore and Rotterdam. We are working on. The second thing, it's about the ETS, the tax. Yes, I agree, Jan. In the final, it's the final consumer who is paying. But what about including like Tangermet Port in the ETS tax? How? Tangermet is part of this, and the money is given to, as I know, to the owner of the ship to develop. It's European. Tangermet, what they're doing on this? They will give to Moroccan company to develop? I don't think so. Maybe someone can give answer to that. Final things, it's as I say in the first 2 days in Evora, please think about Africa. We are talking about this infrastructure, gas, and all of this. Africa is so far about what you are thinking about. If you are going to Africa and think about this modern or this solutions, they are so far. I saw that. And the final, you are going to ask African to follow. They cannot. If you are thinking globally, think about all the countries. Not Europe, they are prepared. North America, they are prepared. Some of South American country, they are prepared. Yes, Singapore, China, maybe Japan. If you are counting the countries, it's not even half they are ready. I think, in my opinion, the first step, it's to get all countries, not at the same level, but at the minimum prepared to the next generation. Thank you.
Muhammad, I would say Singapore is prepared, but also not so prepared because we have a tough challenge. We can't produce fuels in Singapore. We have to source it from regionally, globally, and that may add up, on the cost. And our bunkering hub status today at 52 million tons. We are about 1/5 to the quarter of the world's bunkering volume. And how is this industry that has many ecosystem players, many of which are small and medium enterprises? How is this going to transition? So it's a key worry of ours. And also, we don't even know what fuel it will transition into. And we can't look at just 2050. We have to look at the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 15 years, etc. It's a tough challenge for us. And we need to have that flexibility, but we don't have the amount of land to actually plan that well, So we have to plan really very much with a lot of policy flexibility that we could transition. Say today, LNG, we have a LNG terminal, but this LNG terminal could actually be transitioned to ammonia storage and for bunkering. Because today our grid is 90% or so by LNG actually, pipeline from Malaysia and Indonesia. And then this is also an energy security matter. So if we are going to transition going forward, how are we going to do it? So what we did is actually to do a demand aggregation between power generation and shipping so that we are not sure how much the demand is, but if any case ammonia bunkering is not there, the volume and the demand is not there, the volume that we imported in could be used for domestic power generation. So we have to do this sort of policy flexibility. Yeah. I think there's a lady that's raised her hand.
Good morning. My name is Carolina. I work for Zero, an environmental NGO based in Lisbon. Out on the opportunity to contribute to this debate as well. We do have very singular positions relating to shipping and the transition of the sector towards a more sustainable path. And I just wanted to also say that I feel that sometimes the discussion, and I think this was mentioned before, is too much centered on a fuel-centric approach when we should be talking about an energy-centered approach. And this means that there are a lot of options that shipping companies and ship owners can take before looking into the new fuels. And I do know that green fuels will be a very important part of the equation, but it's not the only part. And we should be looking into energy efficiency more, whether in terms of regulation, whether it is regional regulation or international regulation. And the IMO is actually working now towards having more energy efficiency, well, stronger energy efficiency standards, because this is also related to the discussions that we had yesterday on the digital part. Because when we talk about digitalization and just-in-time arrival, we can also relate that to slowing our ships. And this is a very important part also, not just for reducing the emissions and fuel consumption, but also other environmental impacts that the current speed of ships have in marine life, for instance. So it's all very connected. And I think sometimes we focus too much on fuels when there are a bigger range of options. And also going back to the question of fairness and the EU leading and having some not level playing field, the IMO is actually looking into the levy. And the levy the TNE, which Zero also is a part of, has actually done some research that the impact of the global levy or extending the EU ETS for just 100% of the in and out EU voyages would have a minimal impact in smaller states, but the revenues that could be generated by this scheme would help these countries transition in a way that they have no way of doing so now. But since this is a discussion on green corridors and also the fuel related, I do have some questions, particularly on the production of methanol. So where does this CO2 is coming from? Because we know that by 2040, you cannot use the CO2 that is related to the production, cement and all that. You have to use biogenic CO2. So where are you getting this from? And we know CO2 will be a scarce resource as well moving forward. We hope it's going to be scarce. And also on the ammonia side, have you looked into the possible impacts that using ammonia will have? Because again, we go back to a longer approach and a longer term vision, and we know that ammonia may have some challenges on the environmental level regarding emissions and also toxicity that might make it not a very good option in the long term. So have you looked into other options, and also with these two particular ones, what do you see the challenges and where does the CO2 come from? Thank you, and sorry for the lengthy.
That's for you, Roger.
Definitely. Side effects, right? One of the side effects is that every producer of CO2, biogenic CO2, let's be very specific, biogenic CO2, paper, pulp industry, biomass plants, etc., have suddenly felt that they're sitting on a pot of gold with leprechauns dancing all over the place. Okay? What do I mean by that? They are like bing, bing, bing. We are going to make money. Yeah? Right now it's a waste. But sometime in the future, it will be a gold mine. But what's happening today is the same effect as the hydrogen effect in 2020. Everybody thinks they have gold and they're putting ridiculous price on it. Which means if we cannot regulate the CO2 price by way of a market mechanism, which the European Commission has forgotten about, okay, and has done nothing about it, we cannot produce methanol. Because we cannot pass on the cost of the biogenic CO2. The capture and production of CO2 is fixed. But the gate fee to get access to that CO2 is not. Because they say, well, if we want our CO2 price to be linked to CBAM, or we want they want to make money out of the CO2. Everybody wants to make money, right? So they also want to make money. So that's the side effect. So the off-takers of the methanol, that are the shipping companies or whoever else that needs methanol, there are like 100 more applications for methanol than just shipping fuel. And it's a very important chemical within the end user industry. Right from diapers, adhesives, to all kinds of things, you need methanol, okay? So basically, we have, as a producer, our methanol project is in Maceira. We could produce about 320,000 tons of methanol a year. But because we are not willing to progress from an LOI stage to heads of terms and binding agreement with our off-takers, in fact, our methanol off-take is subscribed 72% as of today. All of it shipping. The problem is, all of them want a fixed price. I can't give them a fixed price because of the carbon element. So this is a side effect. What will eventually happen is the CO2 price will be pushed so high up and the direct air capture price will come down drastically, which is at about 900 now per ton. And if the CBAM and the greed and all of it pushes the CO2, the traditional biogenic CO2 pricing up, there'll be a meeting point of the cost of direct capture versus the cost of buying traditional biogenic CO2, which means you will enable a different method of doing it, but we are not there. It's a bit far off, maybe 2040, 2050, we are not there. Ammonia is demonized. All fuels are toxic. Methanol is toxic. Ammonia is toxic. Jet fuel is toxic. Diesel is toxic. All of it is toxic. It's the radiation impact. And when you go to the chemical analysis of each of these fuels, each and every one of them has challenges. Ammonia is being handled for over 70 years. And everybody knows how to handle it. Methanol has been handled for over 80, 100 years. So everybody knows how to do it. It's just that ammonia hasn't yet been used as a fuel. And this is where we are not willing to accept the pure chemistry of each of these products. We are rather dealing with the fog of war. Everything is very foggy, so yeah, okay, ammonia is bad. It is toxic. So is methanol. So is diesel and all of it. And each of them needs to have a handling protocol, especially when we start changing the application of these products. So that's not happened yet, and we need to do that. Okay? So these are aspects that I would say need to be considered. You cannot have a clear-cut answer saying, this is good, this is bad. It's shades of gray of what is good and what is bad. We will have to accept the lesser evil in everything that we do. And one thing that we should be very careful of is when we start bringing new products to have new applications in the market. We just need to be cautious of how it's going to impact existing users, because all these products are needed for our day-to-day life as well, fertilizer, agriculture, etc. So we shouldn't forget about that. Ammonia has one element that everyone tends to forget. It doesn't have carbon involved in its chemical composition. Okay? Yes, it has NOx and SOx emissions, but they can be digested by the new ammonia engines internally, and you get no, you basically have a zero carbon emission coming out of the other end of the engine. But that's not so with methanol. And that's why we have this circular problem of insisting on using biogenic methanol rather than what we would call geogenic, or the largest emitter is the cement industry, to the cement process. So that's where the challenge comes in. Methanol will still reintroduce the carbon into the atmosphere. So nothing's, you know, like a silver bullet or a eureka moment. Everything has the lesser of evil that we need to, if you know what I mean, we need to choose carefully. Yeah.
Can I add on?
Sure.
Yep. I would like to share a little bit about how Singapore takes small steps through partnering either local ecosystem players or through Corridor to help ourselves on it. So for methanol, we realized that methanol fires are actually naked to the eye in room temperature. So that is something we trialed with local institutes of higher learning and MERS, through heads-up exercises, bunkering pilots. We bring in infrared drone cameras. So there's us working together in a small group, actually not very small, it's like 20 plus partners together over 1 year to prep for the first methanol bunkering for Laura Musk. And then after that, we share our lessons learned with Rotterdam, etc., even at IMO level as well. And then for ammonia, we are also worried, like for toxicity, the seaman crew on board and so on. So we are looking at 2027 to start ammonia bunkering in Singapore. So this is an ongoing tender that's down to the last stage to be announced sometime early next year, yeah, that's right. So today we have VOPAC in Singapore, ammonia storage, a small facility. So shipment has been coming in, right? For ammonia from ship to shore. So for ammonia bunkering, we'll start small from shore to ship first. We do not do the usual ship to ship bunkering in the open sea. So we do it small first. It's just reversing the flow of the cargo. Just like today, it's been coming in and everyone is fine with it. They've been here for decades. No one says anything. But tomorrow, if we reverse from shore to ship, people will start to say, like, oh, is it safe and bunkering? But essentially, it's the same. It's just reverse of the cargo flow. So that is us thinking ahead about comms line to public, how we actually make it that it's a small step and then everyone's on board together. The Singaporeans who live, Singapore's so small, right? You live near the port, etc. And all the workers that are in the port, to have to give them that confidence that this is okay. I've been doing it for ages. Yeah.
And the one that hasn't really got an answer yet, we'll get to you in a second, is the one with the question of Africa. And as I see this, I see that the cost of the process in which we are at the moment are astronomical. And all of those small countries cannot afford to participate in that development. So once we have learned the lessons here and burned our fingers a few times, then we might get to those people because we know what fingers not to burn.
I mean, one thing Africa has benefited over the years is what you call the leap, the technology leap. So we shouldn't forget that, imagine in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, right up to the 80s, you had wired phones. In the US, you had wired phones across the world. Now imagine putting wires across Africa for phones, right? But what happened? You had the mobile revolution. In Africa, you can have your mobile phone as a bank, a weather service, as a trading platform, far earlier than we would have it in Europe, in fact. In fact, a trader, a farmer, can go and sell his tomatoes on a platform. We can't even do that over here. But in Africa, you can, and you'll get your money paid through a secure channel. So all I'm saying is, true, we should take Africa along. They're not ready. We are not ready for them. They are not ready for us. We'll have to give them the time. But once, like Jan said, once we burn our fingers and we learn, we will be able to do this much better, production or whatever else that we want to do. We can then give them the benefit of that technology leap, of skipping a few things before, they can get to the end. Yeah.
And Pascal?
1, 2, 3. Yeah, a couple of things. From an Africa perspective, I will take my IAPH hat. I have the right to disagree about what has been said. I think Africa is very much engaged in hydrogens. We have projects in Namibia, we have projects in South Africa, there are discussions in Kenya, there is discussion in Morocco as well. So I think it's already there. And at the World Port Conference 2 months ago, we have a CEO of NAMPorts who was there to present the hydrogen project along Rotterdam and Antwerp. So it is already happening. In digitalization is a little different. There is a big divide, and I fully agree on this, but it's important. I think going back to the discussion of fuels and GHG, because the question is not about fuels. I mean, the question is GHG emission at start, right? It's why we're talking all about digitalization and decarbonization. Again, and very often in our industry, we're missing the boat. In discussion here, we're talking only about one side of the coin, which is ship to shore. Supply chain is not only ship to shore. From a GHG emission, 2/3 is on road. Trucks, not at sea. It's only 2 to 3%. So I think that in the work that we've been doing at IAPH for the last 2 years with the large cargo owners of the world, we have looked to that subject matter from a digitalization and decarbonization and end-to-end supply chain. So when IKEA is going to any customers and any ports around the world and any stakeholder, they said, what do you do in digitalization and decarbonization? And our objective at IKEA, for example, we are very active at IAPH. They said, it's not only the ship size. How do you manage your multimodal environment? So the 2/3 of greenhouse gas emission for freight is tackled. So truck, how do we do it at truck? How do we change our business? So here, for example, in SINS, what's very interesting is rail is key. Like in Edward, rail is key. So you have already worked on that side, but we need to whenever we talk about, I think, fuels, and we should not talk ship to shore. And when we talk, I think, it's a personal opinion here, I will not engage IAPH here, but when we talk about the corridor, Singapore to Rotterdam, it should not be Singapore to Rotterdam. It should be end-to-end from a customer perspective. So when we measure things and we have KPIs, we have the KPIs, from Munich to XYZ in Asia, from a cargo perspective. And of course in Singapore it's primarily transship but up, so that cargo is coming also from somewhere else, potentially from China, right? So I think it's important to look at this. If you take CMA CGM, the file 1 and file 2 is going from Busan to China to Singapore to Tangier, or not to Tangier, and go to Rotterdam, but it's not stopping in Rotterdam, so it's going to inside, in Munich, for example. So we should look at that from an end-to-end to supply chain, and everything we do, we should look at it this way from a digital perspective, from a decarbonization perspective, so to see where is the impact, because ship to shore, it's only 1/3, of GHG in freight, so I think we need to look at that in depth, and it is what we've been doing with the Global Supply Chain Resilience Task Force, where we got large car owners sitting at a table and looking at the black box of the maritime supply chain with us, with container shipping lines, with global terminal operator, with PCS operators, with FIATA as well. So we are taking for the first time a holistic approach, a 777 view, how to address both decarbonization and also digitalization. So I just wanted to bring positive things, but we should not forget that the seaside is only one element. And the big chunk that we're not talking about is the interland, from a decarbonization. So, and at some point, whatever energy is concerned is concerning the interland as well. What do we do in trucks? What do we do in trucks? I mean, do we want, we got some NGO around here. Nobody is talking in EVs about one thing. It's mining. Mining of lithium. Nobody is talking, no media is talking about. So we said EVs are great, but nobody is talking the mining story. Right? So to be also realistic. So sometimes, we miss the boat on other things. So, mining, yes, okay. So we mine the earth, right? So what are we gonna do? It's another story. But so we need to have a global view about things as well, right? So I like on the corridor that was presented from Sins to Brazil, we're looking at the corridor from an end to end, inside Brazil. So that's interesting.
I know that you have your hand up, Janko, but I think we spend more time than I actually thought we would be able to, but I say that I agree completely with your point, Pascal, that maritime transport is only part of the thing, is not the thing. My experience with maritime community is they are essentially concerned with key to key, while shippers are always concerned with end to end. And in short sea shipping in Europe, that mismatch of perception has led to the fact that not one single ton has moved from road to sea for intra-European transport since I started these European projects 30 years ago. So obviously the maritime community has to adapt to the requirements of their customers more than they have done in the past. So I completely agree that eventually the green maritime corridors will have to find their place in an end-to-end context, no doubt about it. I also wished we stopped talk about emissions and start talk about energy, because that would give a much different type of thinking, different type of initiatives, and as long as there is a direct relationship between energy use and emissions, by focusing on reducing energy, we both save money and we save emission at the same time. So there I definitely support a lady from Zero, that is the way to go. So I've for quite some time stopped use the word emission and use the word energy. And that is then thank you for your attention, and thank you to two of you. Thank you very much.
This is the end of our panels. I would like to thank everyone for having shared these 2 days with us, but it isn't over yet. We have a coffee break now, the same place that we did yesterday for 20 minutes. And after that, we will take a tour on the port to visit the terminals for those who have registered. Thank you again so much for having shared this moment with us. See you next time.